All right, we're going live here. I'm going to give it a second because it's still loading. All right, I think we're live now. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Julia from Itinerant Literate Books. We are super excited to be joined tonight by Ryan Graudin, Amie Kaufman, and Roshani Chokshi to talk about Ryan and Amie's new book, The World Between Blinks. We're going to get some little background on the book, on the writing process, and probably some fun other tidbits that they throw in there for you guys. Just as a quick reminder, we do have the live chat going. Kristen and I are keeping an eye on that. At the end of the discussion, we'll open it up for some audience questions. So if you have questions, just kind of throw them in the chat while you think of them. We'll keep track of those and ask them at the end. All right? Okay, so I'm going to throw it over to Roshani, and she's going to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you could join us today. I am so freaking excited to talk about The World Between Blinks. I loved this book. I got to read it early. My name is now on the back of it somewhere saying that I liked it, which never ceases to be less cool. Although it's very awkward when you know that happens and there's a stranger and you're just like, turn to the back. It's my name. So I wanted to open it up, first of all, by just asking Ryan and Amie to just, describe the book to people who haven't read it yet. Maybe give us like three words to describe it. And you can't use world or between or blinks.
Oh, that's tough. 3 words. All right. I am going to say... You get 6 words? No, 6 combined, surely. I will say funny fantasy adventure.
Ooh, everything I love.
Nerdy history portal.
Nerdy history portal.
Yeah.
I think I would, like 1,000%, if I had wandered into the back of some wardrobe and was like, saw a door that said Narnia and then a door that said Nerdy History Portal, I would have 100% opened that one and go into there. I loved this book so much. I'm obsessed with portal fantasies. There's something that's so comforting about that world building. It never gets old. It never loses its magic. And I'm really curious about, for you guys, was there a world when you were reading as a kid that made you like desperate to visit it? Or is there something that you've read recently where you thought, yes, that fictional world is the one I would like to buy real estate at?
Wow. I mean, I think Look, I've gotten a lot less choosy lately about the sort of fictional worlds I would be prepared to travel to be honest. But I know for both of us when we were kids, Narnia was a big one. And in fact, the kids' surname, Baruna, they're Jake Baruna and Marisol Contreras Baruna, is from the Battle of Baruna in Narnia. So it's our tiny little hat tip.
Oh, I love that. That's
our tiny little hat tip. And I think, for me, there have been a lot since then, but Narnia was where it began. And it was something about, I loved fantasy stories that were set in fantasy worlds. And I still do, I write them. But there was something about the portal fantasy that meant that it could happen to me. Mm-hmm. If I could find the right wardrobe or the right door or the right way through, then I could go to this magic world. And that was very appealing.
So you just go like opening closets in every new house you go to, like looking for Narnia.
I spent a lot of time as a kid trying to experience books. Like there was the time I don't think she's so big in the US, but in Australia and the UK, one of the biggest kids authors of all time is Enid Blyton. And she wrote these series about kids who solve mysteries. And I remember when I was about 8 being like, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to solve a mystery. Turned out it was really hard to find a mystery that you couldn't solve by just like asking an adult what the answer was. I spent so long trying to find one.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Redwall. Like I went on like all the fan websites and then like made my own recipes. And then like I was kind of a feral latchkey child for a while I was in school. Like I had lessons in the morning and then I was done. And so I just kind of ran off into the woods with one of my friends. We pretended to be the Hares of Salamandra Strong and have battles and stuff. So that was definitely my
And
world.
you wrote to the author, right?
Yeah, Brian Jakes, he was the very first author that I met. He came to Charleston when I was 13, and I was just like so starstruck. Oh,
That's amazing. You guys are clearly much more. I love how Amie's path is like, I will find a mystery to solve, and Ryan is like out in the woods having battles. I am a fool. And so I would just lock myself in closets and just be like, any minute now, someone's going to come find me and they will say, shock, you are a gasp. No, wow, let me, like kind of thing. But what that ended up doing was because my parents would just go somewhere else and I just remained locked in a closet for sometimes an hour or so on end. It was horrible. I've almost suffocated multiple times in sleeping bags, thinking that perhaps if I just crawl to the end of it, surely a nerdy history portal will appear.
Like I'm totally lost.
I'm just all sad things. So speaking about nerdy history portals and the sort of world that readers can expect with World Between Blinks, what's the kind of research that you guys did? Was there any historical fact that delighted you the most, that you were like, I have to put this into the book because the children must know?
Oh my goodness, so many. So, because like the premise of this world is that everything lost from our world goes there. And that's like big stuff like cities and people, and also small stuff like the pen you thought you had a minute ago and now you don't seem to anymore.
Yeah.
I think I have a lot of favorite facts. I'm trying to choose one. I think probably my favorite is a Russian ship called forgive me anyone watching who speaks Russian, but the Lyubov Orlova, which was a cruise ship originally, right? And it reached the end of its cruise shipping life and it was going to be towed away and cut up for scrap. And I guess it wasn't on board with that. No pun totally intended, actually. And the tow line broke and it started drifting towards Canada. And the Canadians were like, we're nice, we're not that nice, and towed it back off shore again. But they only towed it out into international waters. And then they were like, all right, our work here is done, and let it go. And off it floated into the ocean. And like, this is going to sound dumb, but like the ocean is a lot bigger than you think. As in, we are totally capable of losing a ship out there and never finding it again. And that's what happened. And so for a while there were some sightings, like it got sighted off the coast of Ireland and it got sighted a few other places. And then it made headlines because the rumor went around that it was going to beach itself in the UK and that it had now been a few years and that all of the rats that had been on board had evolved into a race of super cannibal rats that like lived in tribes and ate each other essentially. What? And it was, that it was going to beach itself in the UK. And that all these rats were then going to like jump off the ship and the UK would be overrun. And the best bit is that this happened in 2014. This isn't like believed in cannibal rats. It's like a few years ago. And it never showed up in the UK. And some people think that's because it sunk, because the emergency radio beacons went off and they only go off when water hits them. So they think maybe that means it's underwater. But we know that it's actually in the world between blinks. And it's floating around there. And our kids have to dodge it when they're getting it.
And the hungry rats.
Mm-hmm.
Rats.
Yeah, I love researching, and that's probably why I write a lot of different historical books, just as an excuse to research different eras. But I have two small facts that I loved so much. One was that Queen Nefertiti in Egypt, she disappeared from historical records, which is why we ended up putting her in this world. But she had a preference for like dark blue wigs. So she would just wear those, which I think is very interesting in history. We don't know what she looked like otherwise, just the fact that she wore these wigs. And then another fact that I came across, so we put a whole bunch of different underwater cities in the world, and there's this giant underwater city megaplex, and there's some that can range from like Atlantis, the city of myth, to Wanaku, which is ruins that are under Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, so actual cities that sank. But one of the cities there is Port Royal, and it was an infamous place in Jamaica for pirates, and a lot of the city slid off into the sea after an earthquake. But one of the pirates who liked to hang out there was the infamous Blackbeard, and he hung out and he met a monkey, a howler monkey he loved this monkey so much that he named it Jefferson, and then just took it with him on his ship. And so like Blackbeard and this monkey named Jefferson had adventures after that. So they're not in the world, but they're in the appendix about Port Royal. So I had to slide that in.
I love that.
Jefferson, the pirate monkey. I mean, there's so much. We're still finding stuff all the time, but I think one thing that surprises a lot of people, but I grew up and I'm used to it, is there's an old Australian Prime Minister in there, Harold Holt, because we lost one of our Prime Ministers one time. He went swimming and didn't come back. And there are a lot of rumors about whether he got taken by a tiny Chinese submarine or whatever. But I mean, and the answer is like, no, it's a surf beach. He got lost in the surf and now he's in the world between blinks. But he's very helpful to the kids.
That's true. That's very true. That delights me so much. The idea that maybe treasure is found, but perhaps at a time when we were supposed to find it, that it's locked away and lost for a reason. And even just what I love so much about the story is the sense of perspective that the kids get, like as they look through pieces of history and they think about things a certain way or a new way. And Ryan, what you said about Nefertiti really reminded me of this. I saw like the famous bust of Nefertiti that's in one of those German museums. I forgot which one. I think the Pergamon, whatever. Anyway, but when you look at this statue bust, I mean, she's beautiful, she's stunning, etc. But I remember this one historian talking about how the way in which she's supposed to be viewed is when you're kneeling. And so if you kneel before her, that is when she becomes the most beautiful, godlike, all this kind of stuff. And I was sitting with that detail for ages that, as with story and as with treasure, sometimes you just have to tilt it or approach it a different way. And I think that applies a lot to the craft of writing. And you guys co-wrote this. What were some of the challenges there? Were there places in the story where you had to, kneel down before the idea and look at it a different way to see all the wonderful possibilities that were waiting for you?
This one was, I think, probably the most fun either of us have ever had writing something. Yeah. Because we're such giant history nerds that we were always happy, even when it was hard. But once we'd sold the book, which we sold on a few pages to our publisher, came time to write the book. And I was in New York touring for something, and Ryan flew in to crash in my hotel room and to plot with me. And the problem with having a million cool history nerd ideas you can put in a book is like, where do you start? How do you choose your favorites? And so we ended up just writing a bazillion index cards, just everything we could think of on an index card, and spreading it out all over the floor. Mm-hmm. And then hanging the sign on the door that is like, please do not clean this room. And then starting to kind of slowly but surely move them into order and figure out which ones we could keep. But I think what was surprising, I don't know about you, Ryan, was that we didn't have a moment where we disagreed at any point. It felt like, more than any story I've ever written, it really felt like sort of uncovering a vein of gold. Like it was there and we just had to hunt until we found it.
Yeah, it was a delight, honestly. And like, I've been struggling with other books for years at this point, and to just find this like pure joy to escape to, it just kind of, saying it wrote itself is cliche and a disservice to, people who put in the hard work, but like the story really did just come together. And I think part of it was just co-authoring for the first time, like having someone who was always like feeding back ideas and to, bounce, like just to be like, do you think this is cool? And Amy's like, yes, this is amazing. This is cool. And what if we did this too? And like, it just kind of builds on each other, and it's really, really fun. So
I love that. And then I'm really also curious about the characters. I mean, they just jump off the page. They're so great. And they're so funny. How did you guys decide like the personality traits of both of them? Like, how did you decide that they would be cousins rather than like siblings or all that kind of stuff? I'm so curious.
Yeah. Like,
you know, I actually found one of our early emails about this. Like I was looking back at the very first emails where we were discussing it, because one of the things that came in really early was that Ryan wanted to have Marisol as a character who, and you should speak about this in a sec, but who would speak to her nieces. And that meant that she was going to be Bolivian American. As an Aussie, couldn't be less qualified to write a Bolivian American character. Like, that's a million miles from my experience and not a great idea for me. And so we were thinking, well, how do we, okay, if they're not siblings, but we want them to be together, cousins became quite natural then.
Yeah.
And it very quickly became a book about how they both reacted to losing things, how they reacted to losing their grandmother, how they reacted to the fact that they're going to lose the family holiday home now, how they both go in very different directions with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you want to talk about Marisol a bit?
Yeah. So Marisol, as Amie was saying, is based off of and a tribute to my two nieces, who their mother is American and their father's Bolivian, and they grew up in La Paz. And so they're cross-cultural and bilingual, and they're just like delightful girls. And I wanted them to be able to read a story that they could see themselves in, because, you know, their situation is so rare, or not rare, but it's so unique, that like I didn't think that would necessarily happen. And their mom is a huge reader, and they're both turning into big readers too. So I based Marisol off of them. And then Jake, the other cousin, he is also slightly based off of my sister-in-law, my husband's family experience of being a third culture kid, which they were overseas, but they were Americans. And so they grew up in a very strange kind of isolated, like in compounds, they never felt like they could belong anywhere or belong to one. Like when they were in America, they didn't feel American, but when they were overseas, they didn't feel like wherever they were. So I wanted to write that into Jake's character, and that really played very well into his sense of like always losing things, always moving, like never feeling steady, or like at, you know, these things that my husband and his family, a lot of his family members have wrestled with that are unique to their situation too. So.
Yeah. And I think like what's cool about it is that it's something that translates into experiences that we all have. You know, we all have, you know, in different ways, you know, the experience of the first day at school, or the experience of, you know, walking into a party and realizing like, you know, the host and you don't know anyone.
Oh, no.
You know, even when you're quite comfortable with it, because I grew up flipping back and forth between Australia and Ireland, and I'm comfortable in both places, but I also knew growing up that there were things I didn't get about both places, or there were things that I was missing about both places. And there'd always be that sort of disjoint when I settled into the new place. And I think, you know, although for Jake it's quite, I don't want to say extreme, but like it's a real feature of his life, we all have it to some degree. We all have it in smaller ways. And I think sometimes you don't need to see your exact experience on the page. You just need to know other people have the same feelings you do. And, you know, I think a lot of people
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's like honestly my favorite thing about writing middle grade fiction. That we get to revisit these moments of first, these moments of panic and love and excitement, and just filter them through the lenses of other experiences and all that kind of stuff, which is so rewarding. And I'm really curious, can you tell us, so I know this is book one, so how many more books do we get to look forward to?
Oh, well, I mean, we just, we just handed in the draft of book 2 a couple of days ago.
Amazing.
So, yeah, we're still giddy with happiness that there's always a moment, I think, well, I mean, I know maybe you guys do it better than me, but when I'm writing towards the end, where you're kind of like the gymnast flying through the air for the last little bit of the hobble horse, and you just have no idea, are your feet going to plant, or are you just going to go dush, 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 all along the mat?
Or just be like, I will write this later. Here.
Yeah. And I think we kind of did the landing where like your feet stick and your arms go like, whoa, for a minute, but then you actually stay up. So I think we stayed up. We'll find out from our editor.
I love that.
And I mean, gosh, we'd like to write books 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Hopefully lots of people pick these ones up.
Yes. They should. You're going to miss out on an adventure. And also just changes the way that you look at light. Like, gosh, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Ryan, help me. This tower that has light.
Oh, the Morris Island Lighthouse.
That lighthouse. Almost the house that has light. God help. Can you tell us anything about book 2 before we move into reader questions?
Let me think.
We're like a thing. Like
There are
one thing. Huh? Did you say
there
there
Yetis.
There are Yetis, yeah, in book 2, and we had a lot of fun with the Yetis. I think they were our favorite bit. And there's also a giant mountain of pens, of lost pens. I think I contributed probably half of it myself. And the way the stories are set up is, because I do get yelled at a lot for cliffhangers, the way the stories are set up is that each book in the series is its own complete story. Each book in the series is its own adventure to the world, which ends, and then the next book is a new adventure. So it's not one where readers are going to be left waiting to find out what happens.
I love that. That's what I love about books. They feel like pocket worlds and pocket universes. And when we want to like dabble in them, when we want to go play somewhere else, we just have to open it, which is so delightful. So we got about 20 minutes left, and we'd love to take reader questions. I know that you should be asking all the questions. Everybody here is extremely brilliant, especially Ryan and Amie.
There's the woman with a massively best-selling middle grade series, yeah.
We do have a couple of initial questions. The first one is from Guillaume from France. What books or authors inspired you for writing? I think maybe generally, and perhaps also, I know y'all covered it a little bit for this specific book, but if you could go into more detail on this.
I think when I was in grade sixth grade Americans, my librarian told me that a book called The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper was her desert island book. And I'd never heard of a desert island book before. And I remember thinking like, wow, like how good must it be that she would take it with her? You know, like that would be the one she would choose. And then a few weeks later, I got my first ever gift voucher for my local bookstore, which is still my local bookstore today. And I went down there and I bought the whole series bound up as an omnibus. It's got that really thin, almost like Bible paper. And these days, like the cover has fallen off and the whole thing's like held together with a big rubber band. And I started reading, and it was sort of a form of portal fantasy. It was about a boy in our world who is touched by magic and who has these magical experiences. And again, I spent an awful lot of time, I read this in 6th grade, like an awful lot of time through much of high school, really, just kind of faintly hoping that maybe that magic would show up for me. And I still read that book every Christmas. It's because it always, as at the end of the year, as I start to get a little tired, it kind of just relights my magic flame, I think, at the end of the year.
That's great. So I started writing my first larger project as a kid because I was reading Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine, and it's this amazing middle grade book. I think it's a Newbery, got the Newbery Award, but it's basically a Cinderella retelling where Cinderella is cursed to obey. And I finished the book and I was like, okay, where's the sequel? And alas, there was no sequel. So I was like, well, I'm going to write a sequel. So I wrote some fan fiction that was not so thinly veiled. Yeah. Some names changed, but it was basically a fanfic sequel to Ella Enchanted. And so I remember just being so going through the throes of writing something for the first time and just staying up so excited till midnight, plotting my book in bed and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably the one book that really launched it off for me.
I love that. I also had the same feeling when Ella Enchanted was a book that was on our summer reading list when I was in 6th or 7th grade. Not 7th, 6th grade or so. And that was life-changing. I remember reading it and thinking, you're allowed to do this with fairy tale? You're allowed to change it, right? You're allowed to change it. It's not something set in stone. And that, coincidentally, is not my favorite thing about fairy tales and mythology, that they're living tales. For me, yeah, just like Ryan, loved Ella Enchanted. The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper is one of those books that I don't know. I feel like this weight on my chest when I think about that world, to the point where I don't want to reread it because what if it's not there anymore or something? What if I've grown up and I can't feel it anymore? I'll just cry.
No, great news. It's still there. I literally did a whole podcast with Ink Feather Reviews, I think. Garth Nix and I did an entire podcast that was literally just, hey, would you like to come and talk about why The Dark is Rising is the best thing ever? And we did for a really long time.
Oh, you've inspired me. This winter, I'm going to reread it. I'm going to be texting you every 5 pages. Here are my feelings. Tell me what to do with them. it'll be great. Yeah.
I sort of love, though, that YouTube began with, like, I'm so inspired by this, I want to make my own stories. And when I think back, actually, my very first story experience was, like, wholesale stealing someone's story and passing it off as my own was actually.
That reminds me of what Philip Pullman said. He said, all storytellers are thieves. He represented us as a raven with a jewel in the beak. And I totally love storytellers. We find the thing that is the most shiny to our glinting little eyes.
Yeah. And true. I mean, when I was in second grade, this is actually Enid Blyton, the same lady who wrote the mystery stories. She wrote a series called The Magic Faraway Tree, which is one of those things that everyone in Australia has read it, and no one in America has. And when you say it out loud to American adults, you begin to realize how, weird it really is. But it's about these kids who moved to the country, and there's this tree in the woods that apparently no grown-ups ever notice that goes all the way up to the clouds, and it's populated with kind of fairy folk who incorporate, as an adult, I now see some, like, faintly concerningly racist stereotypes, but I didn't know that when I was 7. And they go up to the clouds, and there's new worlds up in the clouds every chapter. There's a world, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. There's like a world made of candy, and there's a world made of storms and all kinds of wild stuff. And when I was in second grade, I told all the kids in my playground that this big tree in the middle of the playground was, in fact, the Magic Faraway Tree, and that it did go all the way up to the sky. And I could see this because I was magic and they could not because they were not. And every day I would come to school and be like, hey, so would you like to hear what I did up the Magic Faraway Tree with my magic friends last night? And they would say, yes, of course. And I really quickly locked myself into a serial storytelling format where I had to produce new content 5 days a week. But I didn't have that much to steal from because I was only in second grade and I hadn't read that many books yet. And so I was starting to really wonder what to do when I got caught by my teacher. And next thing I know, I'm up in front of the entire class being made to apologize for telling lies. And little friend to Amie is up there being like, what is truth, really? If we and she's like, is it a magic tree or not a magic tree? And I had to say, it is not a magic tree, and apologize to them. And then we get out at lunch, and like, this is my chance to get off the moving train. But I look, and they're all looking at me with like betrayal in their eyes, and I broke, and I was like, I don't know who told her, but grown-ups aren't allowed to know. So I just had to lie to a teacher about whether that's a magic tree. Nice work, guys. Anyway, who wants to hear what I did last night? And like, I was back in it again.
God, I love that. That is so cool. I mean, what you do is fantastic. I love that you did that. And when I was a kid, I just went the completely creepy route where I was just like, there's a ghost girl across the street. She's coming towards you because you won't play with me. But I felt really left out. And I don't understand why nobody wanted to play Uno with me. And to this day, I don't know how to play Uno because I'm so hard. And then I got in trouble. My grandparents had to like take me away from the party. It was horrible.
Oh, man.
It's fine. My grandparents live in Pennsylvania. The place is really creepy. There was a cornfield across it. It really just lent itself to horror. But anyway, I want to get to the next question because we'll be on this for forever.
Those are great. We have a couple more questions from Guillaume, but I was going to jump to Sonia's really quick. She asked, how do you think the characters from World Between Blinks would react to meeting characters from Ayers Shaw?
Ooh, that is a good question. I mean, I think they'd have a lot of questions about what was going on if they...
Here's the apology.
Right, like, yeah, I think they would. I mean, I think they would get on, though. I think
totally get along.
I think Haru Aru might be a little intense for Marisol. Like, I'm trying to think this through. I think Marisol's talent at finding things could serve Aru and friends very usefully on their end.
That would be very useful. I think Aru would totally get stuck in the world between blinks, trying to steal something from it. And so Homegirl would get punished.
The Nefertiti would lock her away in the prison.
Yeah, that's book 3. Yeah, to rescue Aru.
Yeah, get out this dumb child. My brainchild. Next question.
We had a question. How did you like go about, what was the process of writing the book together? Like, did you write at the same time? Did you like share chapters back and forth as you went? I know you touched on a little bit, but I can go a little more detail.
So we each write a point of view. Like I write Jake and Ryan writes Marisol. Although, I mean, really the thing is, like if Ryan's writing a Marisol chapter and Jake speaks, then actually Ryan writes Jake too. So you kind of both create a character that the other one gets to know, but then after a little while you're both writing everyone. And we would pass the book back and forth. So we'd sort of have a rough plan of what was meant to happen in each chapter, and you write your chapter and send it off. And then the best thing about being in different time zones is you would go to sleep, and when you woke up, there would be more book than there was before.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful.
I wish my books worked like that. Gee.
Yeah, and like I had actually the very intro prologue. It's like a page, and it talks about like the world between blinks is everywhere and it's nowhere and all these abandoned places. It's actually like a snippet of a paragraph that I had written for a totally different book that just like never came to be. And so like I kind of presented it to Amie and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And she's like, yes, this is totally the mood of the book. And she's like, oh, I had a place in one of my former fantasy novels called The World Between Blinks. And she's like, maybe we should call this world that one. So it was cool that we were able to like pull in stuff from like works that hadn't come to fruition yet. Like they were just in the wrong book. So we found the right book for them.
Yeah.
I love that. I've actually have tried to always write an Easter egg that links all of my series together, but then I'm just sitting there for 10 minutes congratulating myself on my cleverness and waiting for 5 years for someone to notice something like so-and-so's last name is this. Wait, could it be?
Yep. That's so true. There are so many Easter eggs in my books that people haven't found yet, and some that I'm pretty sure they never will, but it's really fun hiding them.
Yeah. That's the worst thing about being an author sometimes. It's like we essentially live in the past, or maybe we live in the future. It's write something that it takes like 2-3 years to come out, and then another year for people to truly read it and get it, and then you're just sitting there being like, tell me I'm smart. Appreciate it.
I've been waiting years for you to laugh at the jokes. So
like, when they do, you don't remember what actually happened in the book. Like,
yeah. Well, actually, that is the nice thing, though. When you don't remember and then you read something, you're just like, goodness, that's intelligent.
So I always go back when I'm writing a sequel and redo the first book. Often I do it in audio because I find that it lets me just kind of listen to it and absorb it without trying to edit it in my head, which is
that's smart.
What? You don't listen to your audiobooks. Sorry. Okay. Finish your thing. We'll go to that.
But often I will hit little bits where I'm like, God, that's funny. God, that's good. Who did that? And then probably my co-author. I don't remember. But I love when you hit something and you're like, oh, that twist got me. That sad moment got me. Like I said, I knew it was coming, but I forgot it was coming.
I love that. I can't listen to my audiobooks because I love writing I love reading romance, and I sort of love writing romance, but in the sense that, as Ryan knows, I'm like hiding in my closet with a blanket over my head, writing in, and I cannot hear these things spoken then to me, knowing that they came from my brain, because somehow in my head I'm just imagining my parents standing beside me and being like, "What are they talking about? Where'd you learn that?" Like, I don't know. Then I run. So. Can't do it. Too much Asian guilt. So.
I think for me, the audio makes it feel like I didn't write it. It's what lets me hear it like it's someone else's story. Whereas if I reread it, it's like I definitely know I wrote it at that point
Interesting.
See how it could be better if I reread it.
We have a question from Mirage. Would you let your books be made into a film or series, or would you have any sort of like disquiet about that, or where it goes in that direction?
Oh, Rush, I hope you say yes, because I always name Aru as one of the things I would like to see made into something.
Oh, yeah. Yes. It totally, yes. Yes, it's been off. Sorry. I heard this question is from Mirage, and I was like, that's a great name. I didn't realize it was Rush. That's my fault. Yes, Aru has been optioned for film. And as we all know, optioning just means maybe. We don't know. No one will tell you anything from here on out. But I can honestly see the world between blinks being like this, like sort of in the vein of Lock and Key on Netflix, just like slightly unsettling, maybe. And then Charles, like, I don't know, South Carolina has like so much gorgeous scenery to play with. How do you guys see your film, your book?
You could definitely go that creepy route. I think it would be really cool, like Pixar sort of film, because there's a lot of that humor / gag. Like,
yeah. I mean, it sounds
funny.
Yeah, but like the super practical answer is that making anything that's not set here and now costs a lot more money, and so it's harder to do.
True.
And we've made something that is set in a bazillion other heres and nows. So you need costumes for all different settings and settings from all different times. Like, so we haven't made it easy. But yeah, geez, I'd love to see it in as an animated series of some sort. I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, or like, I mean, this is totally like dream, but like as a Miyazaki film or something like that.
Oh my God.
That would be really
great.
I need that.
Like the dream, but
may as well dream.
Oh, I love that. Love it.
We have another question from Sonia. Would you give any hints for the Easter eggs you guys mentioned before so they can reread and try to look for them?
Ooh. Amie, you first.
I mean, yeah.
I one of Amy's books.
I say, yeah. I mean, I do it in all of my books, whether it's, you know, hiding author friend, like a lot, almost all my author friends die in Illuminae and sequels. And people are always saying like, oh, didn't you like them? I'm like, oh, this is how I show love. And I'm only hearing now that we say it out loud that I guess that's a weird way.
I feel do
like, firing them out of an airlock. But I mean, in my YA, I do a lot of friends' names. I do a lot of song lyrics and musicians. We hide all kinds of stuff and all kinds of people, right down to, you know, the opening scene in Illuminae is at McCaffrey High, which is named after Anne McCaffrey, who was one of my kind of formative authors I read growing up. In Blinks, let me think. I mean, I've given up the Baruna one already, which is probably my favorite. It's like, it's too good. I can't wait for people to find it. I just need to see it right now.
Wizard of Oz references.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah. Some Wizard of Oz jokes, and then Oz is named Oz.
Yeah, I mean, we've hidden the names of some people who are special to us in there as well, and Ryan's hidden the name of someone from another book. Is that in book 1 or book 2? You've hidden someone from another book of yours in there.
Oh, that's in book 2. Wait, no, sorry, that is in book 1. But it's not a book of mine that's out yet. It's a book that's pending. So
yeah. So I think some of them you'll find. Some of them are just for us. There's also, I'm not sure if it qualifies as an Easter egg, but with a lot of the historical stuff, like if we give you a detail, it's real.
Yeah.
So, you know, as the kids walk through the markets of Ostia Antica, which is this old Roman port town that eventually the port filled up with silt and everyone kind of moved away, and now it's ruins where you can have a lovely picnic, which I have done. We spoke to a classics friend who knows a lot about Ostia Antica, and, you know, for instance, there's graffiti, there's donkey for sale, real graffiti. There's statues of wrestlers because they were the celebrities. That's what was really there. You know, the mosaics that we describe in the stall, that's what was really there. So every little detail, if we give you a detail, it's because it's real. So
if there's a bottle of smelling salts in Amelia Earhart's like jacket pocket, she used those to stay awake when she was flying her airplane.
Yeah. So So there's lots of little things, little rabbit holes you can go down and read about.
History nerd portal.
History nerd portal. The best pitch in all the land. I feel like Easter eggs are sort of like, I don't know. I try to reference Maya from the Star Touch Queen and a lot of the other stuff. There's a character from the Gilded Wolves who's actually related to someone in Arusha, but you only catch it if you really like remember people's first names. Yeah, things like that.
I'm going to be rethinking.
I love the idea that all of the worlds are interconnected, like even if they're totally different genres. Like
Totally, yeah.
That it's kind of like, in The Magician's Nephew, where they go to that forest and there's all the different pools you can jump into from all the different worlds.
I've never forgotten that. I loved that scene.
Yeah.
I love Magician's Nephew. I really do.
Yeah.
And the guinea pigs just like running around the lakes.
Right. But I like the idea that, all of our stories are linked by the forest between worlds and you can jump into the different pools.
Okay.
And you know what? I guess in this metaphor, the forest is your local independent bookstore. So let us take a minute before we wrap to say, if you're hunting for your next world, go to your local bookstore and ask them, because they would love to tell you. They know. They've been into a lot of the pools. They can tell you.
We do have two more questions from the audience. If you guys want to answer those last two.
Sure.
Okay. One is, what do you do when you have writer's block?
I actually in my last scene, I did a whole podcast episode about this. So if you'd like my 10-minute answer, you can go listen to Amie Kaufman on writing and get the long answer. But I would say my top tip probably is go back to the last time that you felt confident about what you were doing and look around to see if you took a wrong turn. Look around to see if you're trying to make it go somewhere it's not supposed to go. And I would also say, my advice right now is probably different to what it would usually be, which is right now, if you're finding it really hard, I want you to know you're not the only one, and that we all write for a living and we're all finding it hard to write right now. Every author you admire is finding it hard to write right now, because we're actually all under enormous amounts of stress and coming out of, very slowly, of a really traumatic event. And so also, if you just feel like you can't get it done right now, it's okay to just take a break and look after yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come back.
You can take a walk. You can bake some cookies. You can do anything. I think for me, it's hard because I start to beat myself up if I feel like I want to work, but I feel like I can't. And then you get in this spiral of, I'm being lazy or something, but that's not true. You have to kind of forgive yourself and step back and give yourself space to breathe, go read a favorite book, go watch a movie, listen to songs, or just don't internalize that pressure. Instead, just step away and do something else. Yeah, that helps me a lot.
I also find it helpful, if it's not a structural writer's block, for me, sometimes the writer's block comes from a lack of motivation to write. And again, I totally agree with Amie and Ryan. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with your goals. But I also find it's helpful to reread the things that made you want to write. Rewatch the films that made you excited about the story. And have those on hand, which is great. And remember that inspiration can go both ways. You can be inspired by the things that you love. You can also read a book that you hate and remember that person got paid for that. So you can probably do it too. I find increasingly more helpful because I have this thing called a mortgage and I hate it, but just
All right. And last question, and thank you everybody who sent questions, and sorry if we didn't get to one, but it is, have you gone on any literary pilgrimages to visit places from your favorite books or favorite authors' lives?
Ooh. So my dream trip is to go to the Lakes District in the UK, following a series called Swallows and Amazons that I grew up with. but I'm waiting till my kid is bigger so that we can pretend to do all the things from the books together. Because it's a series about kids who spend their summer pretending to be explorers and pirates and all kinds of things. And so I'm going to wait till she's a little bigger so we can creep through the place and we can pretend to attack the thing and we can do all the stuff.
Oh,
And I mean, my kid's like 20 months old and I've been dreaming of this for like 20 years. So no pressure, kid, but you better like this series. Yeah. I'm not going to leave anything to chance. I'm going to make sure she loves it.
Yeah, back in 2016, I went to visit Amie down in Australia. But before I did that, my husband was like, surprise, we're going to London instead. So we flew to London and then did a day trip out to Oxford. And my one goal to go, like going there was, I mean, not just to see like all of like Philip Pullman's inspirations, but also there was a pub out there where the Inklings met. So C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien and a whole bunch of other really famous writers would get together and just brainstorm and talk. And so I was like, we have to go here and I have to have fish and chips because
you have to.
Yeah.
That was probably like a bigger, like intentional program. For sure.
It was great. He like sneaky emailed me and was like, don't make any plans with us for the first 2 days because we won't be in her house. We'll be in London. She doesn't know. But I was like, I'm going to pay to see this. This is going to be great.
I love that. I feel like, I think of course, now I'm blanking on it, literary pilgrimage. Well, as you can tell by what's behind me, I like a good drink. So I feel like I'm often finding the bars that authors that whose work I may not always love, but at least I respect them as figures or I'm intrigued by them, and I'll go there too. So the Bar Hemingway in Paris, of course I had a martini there. And Cafe Flora, where other like just French artists just met and griped about existence over champagne. I also had champagne and griped over existence, and it was great. So.
I need to take you both to Poe's Tavern whenever you come to Charleston. There's a tavern on Sullivan's Island, which Edgar Allan Poe was like posted out there, and it's like based off of all of his short stories.
Love it.
All of the hamburgers are named after his short stories. It's really awesome.
One day.
Yes.
Yeah. But this was such a treat, you guys. I loved like every single minute of this, and congratulations again on World Between Blinks. It is such a triumph. And if you're watching this, please, please, please read this. You will have the time of your life.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you.
I mean, you're a woman who knows how to write a middle grade series, so it is such a pleasure to have you with us.
That's very sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you guys all for joining us. We really appreciate it here at Itinerant Literate. We also want to say we do have some signed copies signed by Ryan. Amie couldn't make it from Australia right now. We do have some signed copies here you can get, and we have some gifts with purchases that Kristen, my business partner, made. So there's some little bookmarks that are based on some of the like symbols from the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're really fun. These are some feathers, and we've got the hourglass. I'm not sure how well you can see them on this. And we have a little Kraken keychain here.
Oh, my God. Ryan knows how to feel about Krakens.
So yes, you can get them from us here. And thank you all for joining in. Thanks for all the wonderful comments in the chat, and have a good night, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye.